Welcome back. We are joined now by This Week in Iowa political analyst Dr. Stefan Schmidt from Iowa State University. Dr. Schmidt, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so first let's get your reaction to Marco Rubio suspending his campaign Tuesday night. Where do those supporters go who have already pledged their support, i.e. those delegates?
Well, he has suspended and not dropped out of the race, which means that the rules kick in where state rules about delegates are what determine whether they can go to other candidates or not. And he's gotten delegates from, I think, 15 different states, a few here and there. And so it gets very complicated because state parties have their own rules. And I understand there are 2 states where he got delegates where they never wrote a rule about what would happen if their candidate dropped out. And so then it becomes very, very complicated at the national convention.
Yeah, but it is possible that he keeps those delegates for the first round of voting at the national convention, so he might have a lot of power.
Well, that's right. I mean, that is the general rule, is that those delegates are his if he suspends but doesn't drop out of the race, and so he could ask them to support someone else. He might have some bargaining power.
Okay, now if he does, if these delegates do become unbound to him, is it possible? I've heard that, you know, these delegates can be offered money or trips or all of these things to entice them to come to another candidate.
Yes, it gets very nasty and messy, and I'm guessing that Donald Trump has already prepared a very elaborate campaign to try to attract some of them, because he has a lot of beautiful properties. You know, I've actually stayed at some of his golf clubs in Florida when I do lectures or when I do stuff for news channels there. And that would be very tempting, I think, for some of them. But I think delegates generally are pretty principled people. They are not easily bought off, to be honest with you. They really believe in their candidate, their cause, and issues. And so I think generally they make smart decisions.
Okay, let's talk about states from here on out. Where do those supporters go? Which candidate do those Rubio supporters now support?
We've been looking at some statistics, and our best guess here, because you never know what people are going to do, is some are definitely going to go to Kasich, because he and Kasich have much more similar sort of mainstream positions. Some of them will go to Ted Cruz, but I think quite a number of them might actually go to Donald Trump. And so,
well,
you know,
yeah,
they're going to be spread all over the place.
Okay, so it could really help or hurt any of them.
I think so, yeah.
Now, last Tuesday night, Trump couldn't capture Ohio. As we mentioned, Kasich, who is similar to Rubio, did win his home state. But where do you see him going next? Because the likelihood of him being able to get enough delegates to win the nomination, well, it's not even possible.
It is zero.
Zero.
He would have to get more than 100% of all the delegates that are still left, which is impossible to do. And so what he's doing, I think, he's playing the role of kind of intermediary, and he's trying to stay in the race. He will go on. I think he will win delegates in some of the states, but he is going on now to try and basically bring this to the convention without letting Donald Trump and Ted Cruz have the field. And that'll make it for a very interesting convention this summer.
Right. This is going to be probably the most interesting convention that we've had in our lifetime.
Yes.
Probably will have it all. Now, Trump doesn't necessarily have the 1,237 delegates that he needs in order to secure the nomination at the convention. So it's possible that it could be a contested convention, as Jeff Kaufman mentioned earlier in the show. So I mean, he said that there will be riots if he doesn't get the nomination. I mean, what does this look like in the face of the establishment trying to oppose Donald Trump?
This is very, very difficult, and I think you're right that Donald Trump probably cannot get enough delegates to get the majority of them. So when they go to the convention, the question is, will Donald Trump have a very, very large number of delegates, and will he be able to make the case, look, I didn't get the number necessary, but I have so many that you really need to give it to me, which the establishment is really trying to resist. So we see names being floated, even of people who are not in the race.
Right, that's what I want to talk about next. Paul Ryan. I mean, he apparently, but that would have to be a convention if people who aren't in the race come in, and then all of these political people behind the scenes then just start making decisions instead of leaving it up to the popular vote. I mean, what?
Yes, Sabrina, the interesting thing is that the rules for the Republican convention are actually written when the convention starts. They're not written now. And they can write a new set of rules that takes away this clause number 40, which determines, you know, who can and cannot become a candidate. And they can actually say that it can be someone who has not run in the primaries, that there needs to be a consensus candidate for the good of the party. They can do that. It would be extremely, really tense and viewed as very unfair by the supporters of the candidates who have put in so much time and effort, and especially Donald Trump, who is not a patient man and is not likely to put up with having the candidacy taken away from him.
I wish we could keep talking about that, but I do want to very quickly ask, we have just a few seconds, do you think that Bernie Sanders is going to stay in this race, and for how long?
Bernie Sanders is going to stay in the race until the end. He still has a chance to pick up a lot of delegates. That gives him a lot of influence over the party platform and other things, even if Hillary Clinton gets the majority and wins the nomination. So he'll stay in.
Okay, Stephan, thank you so much. Stephan is sticking with us for coming up next.